Hello again, friends. Glad you could join me. We're in the music room today and we're going to talk about sound. Specifically, how is sound different than music? Well, let's figure it out. So you remember from high school physics, sound travels in waves. Think of it as throwing a rock into a pond. The waves ripple out on the surface of the pond. The waves are not the rock, but the waves were caused by the rock. That's how sound travels. You'll remember this little thing. This is the graph of a sound wave. Amplitude, wavelength. Amplitude, that's how loud the sound is. Wavelength is the pitch of the sound. How many times per second this wavelength happens, that's the frequency. So loud, soft, pitch. Those are the only two things that we can alter about sound. So how come some sound is sweet? How come some sound sounds like music? How come some sound is just a book closing? Let's figure that part out. So in your ear, sound hits the eardrum. The eardrum vibrates. Your eardrum is connected to 3 bones. Those bones are connected to this little thing that looks like a snail shell. That's called the cochlea. The cochlea has little hairs inside it and it's filled with water. So as the sound goes through that water, it causes some of the hairs to vibrate. Sometimes it causes a lot of hairs in a specific area to vibrate. Sometimes it causes only certain hairs to vibrate. Your brain interprets those vibrations. And if the certain hairs vibrate in a certain order, your brain says, I like that. Let's look at it on the graph. So you remember that we talked about 1-foot pipes on the organ, 2-foot pipes, 4-foot pipes, 8-foot, 16-foot. You'll notice that they double. Every time you double, you do an octave. Either way, if you make it twice as long, you drop the pitch 1 octave. If you cut the length in half, you make it an octave higher. So, example, here is A 440. That means that this A vibrates 440 times per second. If I want to play the next A down, which is this A, this vibrates 220 times per second. 220, 440. Next octave up. Yep, you got it, 880. So how does that work with this graph? So here's your sound. What happens if you double the wavelength? Now you have an octave higher. What happens if you double the wavelength again? Now you have another octave higher. But you see what happens here? All the waves are in tune. They match. You also notice that here, 2 out of the 3 waves match. Here, 2 out of the 3 waves match. When those waves match, your brain says, that's nice. So we wonder, how can music in Africa that's 2,000 years old, China that's 2,000 years old, and England that's 2,000 years old, how can music develop and use exactly the same notes and they never met each other? That's how. Physics. It's not my invention. It's not humans' invention. It's physics. And it existed before we played music. We just had to discover it. Let me show you something really cool about wavelengths on the guitar. You'll even be able to hear this one. So this is a string with me doing nothing to it. If I magically touch the string halfway, I get an octave higher, but it's called a harmonic. I'm not holding the string down. You'll notice there's a dot there. That's really special. That dot means that's halfway. You'll also notice there's a dot here and a dot here and a dot here and a dot here. Those dots are all important. This dot is halfway between this finger and the nut. Watch what happens when I barely touch the string. Harmonics. Harmonics are part of overtones. I don't have time to explain overtones. You can get a doctorate in it. But basically, what happens is all these waves are all vibrating at the same time. If you can get those waves to mesh so that they hit certain hairs in your ear, it sounds good. So, China, Africa, England, they all developed music that used exactly the same scales because the physics of sound is the same no matter where you are. I hope this wasn't too overwhelming. Physics is cool. Science is awesome. I'll see you all next week. Peace to you.